As a new or aspiring freelance illustrator, the idea of getting new work and continuing to get new work can feel a little bit overwhelming and confusing, and you may not know where to even begin. Like, where do you look? What do you do? In this video, I hope to answer some of those questions and give you some tips and ideas and suggestions for ways that you can build and sustain a long and illustrative illustration career. Let's get into it. A lot of first-time commissions come from word of mouth, so you really want to put the word out there, let people know that you are now taking on freelance illustration projects. It sounds very simple and straightforward, but if people don't know, how are they going to know if they have a project that might be a right fit for you? You can start off by asking friends and family if maybe they know of any projects that might be a good fit for you. I should warn you that this could lead to some weird suggestions or projects. You could have people be like, hey, can you teach little Timmy how to draw just like you? Or you may get things like, hey, we're having a birthday party for our second grader, and we want you to paint their faces because you're an illustrator, right? There may be a lot of these bad opportunities, but in the midst of all those, you may discover that your cousin's neighbor's uncle is starting this new business that requires this whole series of illustrations in like a giant mural. And they've just been looking for the perfect person to do it. And it just so happens that that's you. So maybe you got to paint some snot-nosed face kids' faces, snot-nosed face painting, or teach little Jimmy to paint. But there may be some opportunities there. Listen, the more I think about this, I'm not sure if it's worth asking your family, but you know better than me. So I'll let you make that decision. Let's move on. Another thing you can do is reach out to illustrators that you might know. I know in my situation, sometimes I'll get asked about a project that maybe I just can't take on or I don't have the bandwidth for, and I'll refer other friends for the project that I think might be a good fit. I often talk about the importance of sharing your work and getting it out there for the world to see, but the problem is illustration can be tricky to find. And what I mean by that is someone can't just go over to Google and type in a string of words that describes what you do and expect to find your work among all the other illustrators in the world. Unless you already have a huge following and just everyone knows your name and you have this huge illustrative career in illustration. And if that's the case, you're not watching this video, so let's move on again. So what you can do to give yourself a better chance of people finding your work is to post your work in places that people who are looking for illustrators are already looking. Places like Behance or Dribbble, or even Instagram. And you can make this a little easier by trying to use hashtags that might be relevant to the area of illustration you're looking for. This is changing all the time. Who knows if hashtags even work, but still to this day, the majority of people who hire me have found me on Instagram. So I do firmly believe Instagram is a very important place to post your work. And even though it can feel hopeless or like people aren't seeing your work and it's like, I need to do reels, just putting it out there and like building that pile of work for someone to stumble upon is helpful. At least as I'm saying this, it's still very important. That could change. It always changes. Listen, I started posting my work on Flickr because Instagram wasn't even around yet. So if I recorded this video back then, I would say it's very important to post on Flickr. But what I'm trying to tell you is just think about places where people would be looking for illustration work. And that's where you should be trying to post your work. And another point about that is you want to be posting often. And the reason for that is you could just go onto Behance, post a bunch of work, and then just not do anything and wait for it to go away. And that is a missed opportunity because every time you update one of these things, it pushes you up to the top. Like that's how search engine optimization works. Like one of the things that is checked, one of the most important things is how recent that information is. So if you are posting new things all the time, your account or page is going to be seen as more active and more likely to get shared. So you could make little edits to things where you're just like, adding an image, moving an image, changing the description slightly on pages like Behance so it'll look like you've updated new things. And on Instagram, you just want to be posting regularly. Like you can repost old stuff, you can post process stuff. But if you are just waiting until you have a bunch of work or you're just worried that it's not good enough yet, by the time you're ready to post, when you get it up there, no one's going to see it because you haven't been posting things. So they're not just going to share some random image that got posted by an account that never posts. You need to be active for other people to see your stuff. The next thing I'd suggest is to be social. You may be thinking, what does that have to do with me getting work? I'll get there. And also, when I say social, I'm not talking about social media. I'm talking about social as in society, as in people, as in talking to people. I know it sounds awful, but hear me out for a second. What other stuff do you like doing? Like, what are your hobbies? What are you into? Do you like books? Join a book club. Or if you want to increase your chances even more, think about places or events that maybe you might meet or bump into people who might be hiring illustrators, like gallery openings, art directors club events, conferences, art museums. I already say that, stuff like that. And just remember, the more people that you meet outside of your normal comfort zone, the better chance you have of making more connections and spreading your name far and wide into the world. All right, the next thing you may have heard me talk about a lot of times, and that is self-initiated projects, making new work. There's no client involved, unless you want to pretend there's a client and make one up. You could do that, that's fine. But with this kind of thing, there's no check waiting for you at the end. There's no guarantee that it will turn into anything at all, but it's still super important. Continuing to create work outside of normal commission client work is crucial to a long and steady illustration career. Personal projects allow you to experiment and play and further grow and evolve your style over time, thus keeping your work fresh. History is full of washed up illustrators who had a illustrative career for a short period of time and just sort of did the same thing. They were commissioned to do the same sort of style over and over again until people got sick of it or things changed and their career came to a screeching halt because they weren't doing personal work and slowly evolving their style and growing and staying fresh. Don't be like one of those people. You can use personal projects to slowly steer the trajectory of your career and also help dictate the kind of work that you get hired to do. And here's a personal project bonus tip. Do work about things that you're genuinely interested in, your hobbies, your passions. And doing this may result in a whole new audience seeing your work that otherwise wouldn't have found it. If they were also into the same things that you are, they may be really excited to see this new artwork about that thing. And this can lead to getting your work in front of, a whole bunch of new projects that you hadn't even considered. For me, this looked like doing a series of drawings of every bike that I've ever owned, and then those drawings gaining some traction within the bicycle world and ended up getting featured in Bicycling magazine and led to a whole bunch of different work with different bike companies and bike publications, all kinds of bike stuff. And when I did that series of bike drawings, it wasn't because I was trying to break into that industry. I wasn't smart enough to even put those two together. I was just like, oh, I want to do some personal work. What do I got to draw? I don't know what to draw. I don't have any ideas. And then I was like, oh, well, if I draw every bike I've ever had, that's a lot of drawings because I've had lots of different bikes over the years. So that's a bunch of time that I don't have to come up with new ideas. Although art sites and online art publications and actually even print publications aren't as prominent as they once were, they're still a good place to try to get your work out there because people are still looking at these things. And in addition to those sites, there's also Instagram accounts that, curate and share things. Look for ones that sort of resonate with your style and seem like a good match. And then try reaching out to the smaller ones. It'll be much easier to get your work shared on a smaller site, a lesser known one, than it would be to just shoot for the moon and try to get, on Juxtapose or whatever the big time art sharing thing is now. And something to remember is that the content curators or the people who are managing these other sites or accounts are looking at the smaller ones to look for new ones to feature on their own site. They got to find people too. So having one of the bigger ones find you on the smaller one will give you a much better chance of being featured on the big one than you just reaching out to them directly. A lot of these people like to feel like they discovered something on their own. So you can trick them into thinking they discovered you because you were on the smaller one. And as I mentioned before with the personal projects, if you did a personal project about another area of interest, you could reach out to sites or different accounts that are about that topic and see if they'd be interested in sharing your work. Or even just if you're doing it on Instagram, just tag them in it. And that may be enough for them to see it and feature it. All right, this is another big one. And another one where you might say, what does this have to do with getting illustration work? Well, it does, okay? Be nice. Just be nice to everyone. It's not that much more than that. Just be nice. Be genuinely interested in other people, listening to them, asking helpful questions, thanking them for their time. This can really go a long way because a lot of other people aren't doing it. There's a lot of Rudy Tooties out there. Nobody wants to work with a Rudy Tootie. Look at other artists and illustrators who have a similar style to the work that you do. See if they have a client list. Not so that you can go and steal all of their clients, but if, for example, their client list is full of stuff for kids and children's publications and stuff like that, you may get the idea that, hey, maybe that market would be interested in my work as well. You also may find out that they're doing well in a market that you hadn't even considered. This could lead to just a ton of potential new clients that weren't even on your radar. You can also try to just reach out directly to art directors that you think may be interested in hiring you for your illustrations. And you can do this a number of different ways. If you're looking for editorial work, you can just pick up any magazine and look inside for the masthead. And here you'll find the names of the art directors who worked on that publication. Then you can do some Google Map ninja magic to find the offices of that publication and then just mail a promo to them, the name of the magazine, attention, the art director's name, and the address of the office. And pro tip, use the office address that you find on Google Maps, not the address listed in the publication, because that is not the offices where they are working in most cases. Just a couple thoughts on sending mailer promo things. So many illustrators just send postcards regularly. That's just what they do. They send postcards, and that can be great. But if you're an art director at like a well-known magazine or even a smaller magazine, you're going to be getting tons and tons of these postcards. So maybe instead of doing a postcard, you could do something that is a little bit more memorable. Maybe something that has a handmade touch. Not saying you have to hand construct all of these things, but maybe you make a stamp that you put on there and it just gives it a little bit of a stamped thing. Or maybe it's like some sort of foldy thing. Like maybe you make some nicer promos and send them to less publications, but or like the ones that you really want to work for. And I'm saying publication, but because we were talking about art directors for a masthead, but in general, when you're sending out promos, making something that's a little bit more special will go further than just sending more generic postcards out. You want to trick them into feeling guilty about throwing away your promotional piece. Postcard's easy to throw away, but if it looks like you made something, they're going to be like, oh, maybe I should look at it for more than a second. You can also do some detective work online and try to find their email address and send them an email. Oftentimes, they're just not going to respond. They're super busy people, as you can imagine, but they might. And if they do respond, thank them for their time and, be very courteous. But even if they don't respond, there's still a chance that they may have liked your work and bookmarked it or saved it for a future project. A good way to avoid annoying an art director with the same email they've seen a million times is to make it a little bit more special or unique or add some value somehow. Maybe if it's a client that you would really like to work with, they're like a dream client, maybe you go above and beyond. Maybe you do a cute little illustration of them, or maybe you found them on Instagram because you were stalking them on Instagram. Listen, it's not really stalking because they're posting pictures, and maybe they have like a really cute dog that they share pictures of all the time. Maybe you do a drawing of their dog and you send it to them. That's a good way to get them to want to engage with you. Draw some dogs. And then another pro tip, if you do find their email address and you are going to reach out to them, don't immediately just send a ton of images because that's just going to go directly into their spam folder. Like email applications and, Gmail, whatever they're using is going to see a message coming in from someone that the person has never emailed with. And that email has a whole bunch of files attached to it. That just looks like a virus scam, stupid email. Instead, what I would recommend is saying, hi, whatever, something nice, something thoughtful, mentioning something that they've worked on or something that you've resonated with. Like, for example, if this was like an advertising agency and you saw a campaign that they recently did that you resonated with, that you really liked, that had some fun illustrations in it. You could say, hey, I really loved this campaign and these illustrations, blah, 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 were really fun. I would love the opportunity to share my work with you. Here is a link to my work. Give them the opportunity to decide if they want to check out your work. Don't just assume that they need to see it and you're sending them a whole bunch of things. Mainly because it'll just end up in their spam folder or junk folder and they'll never see it anyway. But always ask. Another thing you can do that I always forget to do and has generally had good results when I actually do it is to reach out to people that you've previously worked with. And this is, of course, assuming that you did good work for them in the past and you were pleasant to work with and you didn't mess up the whole thing and they hate you. If you had a good experience with them, they're happy with your work, then reach out to them and see, what's going on. Say, hey, I just wanted to update you on some new things that I've been doing. Here's some recent projects. I was thinking about this project that we worked on together and it was a lot of fun and I'd love the opportunity to work together again in the future. So please keep me in mind if, anything comes up that you think I would be good to work on. They may perhaps have a perfect project for you to work on, or it might just be a good reminder that like, oh, hey, I remember we did work on that project and that was a good experience. Because, these art directors are working with so many different illustrators all the time that they could easily forget about you. And I know that's sad, it may hurt your feelings, but it's true. They could forget. And if you remind them, they may be like, oh yeah, I remember those good times that we had together. Let's have some more good times. If you'd like some more helpful information about freelance illustration, I recommend checking out this video where I talk about 5 things that had the biggest impact on my career as a freelance illustrator. I think there's some good stuff in there. All right, good talk.